We can talk about who lost and how it shaped things, but who never loses are the guys on Wall Street and the guys in Silicon Valley. The losses are socialized or written off, and the gains are funneled overwhelmingly to them. And that's what happened with WeWork.
The future is about being part of something greater than yourself.
I believed every word that came out of Adam's mouth.
Adam told me I was going to be a millionaire.
From conception to finish, the WeWork documentary took 1 year to make. We did about 30 to 40 interviews for the film. On the set, I would have usually a DP, AC, sound person, and a PA, pretty small crew. We used Canon C500 Mark IIs and ARRI Alexa Minis. We made it during the pandemic, entirely during the pandemic.
The next revolution is the We Revolution.
Adam Neumann sounded like a mythical figure, but it was a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Why WeWork? Why was this person and this company of interest to you?
Well, I'm always interested in New York stories, and I'm always interested in stories about finance, especially when they lend themselves, as this one did, to helping us understand more about ourselves in general. It's like a fable from the era that just ended. And even though that era is just 15 months behind us, in a way it feels like 15 years because of everything we've been through. The WeWork story and Adam's story are a great insight into the way the world worked in this epic that just ended. And I thought it was a rare chance to reflect on something pretty close at hand, but still sort of far in the past.
You tell a 30-something male he's Jesus Christ, he's inclined to believe you.
WeWork went from a $47 billion valuation to near bankruptcy in just 6 weeks.
Do you think your perception of Adam changed as you made the film?
It did. I going into it, I think it's very easy to sort of, especially in these financial films, people always want you to sort of look for a villain. Like, here's this guy, he screwed everybody, he's awful. And I think as I went through making the film, I began to see him as a more complicated person. And certainly there are things he did and mistakes he made that are worthy of a lot of criticism. People are complex, and one of the great things about documentaries when they work is you can really hold conflicting ideas in your head. Like, somebody can really want to do something. They can also be doing it for really selfish reasons. They can also be very misguided and drinking too much of their own Kool-Aid. They can also have inspired other people to do some great things. I mean, all of those things can be true at once in the same person. And I think as I learned more about Adam, I really felt like he contained a lot of those qualities, and some of those were things I was not expecting to find when I started.
Speaking of drinking their own Kool-Aid, I think one of the big standout moments from your documentary is the Latte Conversation.
I reached for my coffee, and Adam's like, "Oh, no, that's mine." And I was like, "No, hold on, I got the cappuccino, like that's a cappuccino." And Adam just looks really confused and upset. And one of the staff is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we actually call those lattes and those cappuccinos here," pointing at the opposite one.
To me, it represented one particular incident that helped explain a larger problem at WeWork, which is that Adam's reign at the company had become such a sort of article of faith that things weren't questioned, to the point where they would change the name of common coffee drinks to sort of warp around his reality. And while it doesn't really matter what you call a coffee drink, I think it was indicative of a stage in the company where bigger and bigger risks were being taken, and ultimately crazier and crazier strategies were being undertaken by the company, because Adam was effectively being told to be as crazy and bold as possible. And perhaps that's good, but there was no one there to say, hey, this is maybe not a good idea, or that's not a good idea, because everything was bent around what he perceived the reality to be. And it was an indication, I think, that the company had, was entering a phase of making some bad decisions.
Adam was getting interest from one of the richest people in Japan.
They gave Adam Neumann $4 billion and said, "Go crazy."
Why was WeWork perfect for that generation of workers?
Well, I think a lot of reasons. First of all, it's a corporate gig, but it's a fun corporation. It incorporated a lot of the innovations that Silicon Valley had. Workplaces can be fun. There can be free beer and ping pong tables. It doesn't have to be just cubicles and gray desks. It also sold, and I would argue sort of oversold at the end of the day, this notion that you're part of something bigger that's doing something bigger and changing the world. And I think that as a slogan at the beginning of WeWork, maybe that was okay. When they tried to have those slogans freight a sort of entirely different worldview, it wasn't really supported by the evidence of what they were doing, because the company was actually becoming bigger and bigger and in some ways less tied to those ideals. Coming out of 2008, 2009, where the job market was bad, I think WeWork appealed to both to the customers who were trying to start new things and to the workers there who felt like, well, you can work at this place that is a company and does pay you and is a corporation and is offering you stock options, but it's also kind of fun and it's part of a mission. And it kind of melded in a way that I think really fit into what that generation was looking for at the time. The idea that you could both, as Adam used to say, make money and make the world a better place while doing it. And I think in a way what WeWork is trying to do with the community was trying to take the sort of elements of an organic community, of a cooperative community, of a kibbutz or a commune, which were part of the inspiration of Adam and Miguel, the other co-founder, and find a way to churn that stuff out by the yard, mass produce it, and sell it. And I think there are elements of that translate, like, oh, this is nicer than gray desks and cubicles, but it's also not like coming to work at a real artist co-op that grew up, in a former warehouse that some guy just took over and squatted in, and then other artists came and then they fought with the city to keep their lease. And it's not that, but they wanted to have some of that feeling. And I think, it's somewhere in the middle to the extent to which they succeeded.
Make some noise!
Everything about WeWork was propaganda.
For God's sakes, they're running desks.
WeWork and Adam are kind of part of this disrupt culture that was happening and still kind of is happening. What do you think the public feels about that sort of disrupt culture today after COVID 2021?
The co-option of that word by Silicon Valley as always being a good thing always seemed a little misleading to me. I mean, you could disrupt a robbery in progress, and that's good. You could disrupt somebody, building a dam to prevent the town from flooding, and that could be bad. I mean, disruption is just a description of an activity. It doesn't really have an inherent good or bad moral value to it. And I think that Silicon Valley tried to suggest that everything sucks and should be disrupted. I don't think that's always the case. Sometimes it is the case. If it's some sclerotic old company that's just charging rent, maybe you're happy to disrupt them. When it's all the cab drivers being bankrupted and not able to feed their families because Uber wants to create this, frankly, exploitative work system where there's endless supply of labor and not always endless demand, I think it's depressive of wages. I think it's very problematic. It's convenient for us, everyone who uses these ride sharing services, but it's also pretty tough on the people driving. I hope that part of what this WeWork story brings to people is there are lessons to take from it about how things were done wrong in this late hyper-capitalist age that it represents. And there are other things to take from it about how we can form communities and being in concert with one another as we move through the world that hopefully can be applied to rebuilding businesses and rebuilding society. And I think we are in a revolution in so many ways right now in terms of race relations and capitalism and just how we all want to walk through the world. Not that WeWork speaks to all of these issues, but certainly I think it speaks to some notion that as we put things back together, what are the parts we want to leave behind?
This is who I am. This is what I do.
Suddenly, this company is a laughingstock.
It was we for everybody except for Adam. Okay, I got it.